Twice in one day with this bullshit. Well, okay, I guess if we have to. Mastercard has released an official statement regarding their role in this little Steam melodrama we're all living through right now. This thing, which I'm sure they wrote after receiving a lot of colorful phone calls, is short enough I can read it just in its entirety. Mastercard has not evaluated any game or required restrictions on any activity on game creator sites and platforms, contrary to media reports and allegations. Our payment network follows standards based on the rule of law. Put simply, we allow all lawful purchases on our network. At the same time, we require merchants to have appropriate controls to ensure Mastercard cards cannot be used for unlawful purchases, including illegal adult content. So this appears to be a lie for a couple of reasons. One, however despicable you may think that some of these porno games on Steam were, none of them are illegal. They can't be. They're games. They're fiction. That's protected. It's protected under the First Amendment, no matter how disgusting it may be. Second, Valve has released their own statement contradicting this. I'll go ahead and read this one in its entirety as well. Mastercard did not communicate with Valve directly despite a request to do so. Mastercard communicated with payment processors and their acquiring banks. Payment processors communicated this with Valve, and we replied by outlining Steam's policy since 2018 of attempting to distribute games that are legal for distribution. Payment processors rejected this and specifically cited Mastercard's Rule 5.12.7 and risk to the Mastercard brand. Of course, there's always the possibility that Valve is talking bullshit here too, but I believe them because, point 3, Mastercard and also Visa have a history of doing shit like this, of applying pressure to companies that offer legal sexually explicit material. The most famous example would be OnlyFans, but a perhaps more on point example would be last year they were putting a lot of pressure on doujinshi vendors to stop selling sexually explicit manga, which again, whatever you think about it, however gross you may think that is, they are drawings. They are not illegal. You may be wondering what exactly Rule 5.12.7 of Mastercard's rules are. Well, here we go. A merchant must not submit to its acquirer, and a customer must not submit to the interchange system any transaction that is illegal or in the sole discretion of the corporation may damage the goodwill of the corporation or reflect negatively on the marks. The sale of a product or service, including an image which is patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value, such as, by way of example and not limitation, images of non-consensual sexual behavior, sexual exploitation of a minor, non-consensual mutilation of a person or body part, and bestiality, or any other material that the corporation deems unacceptable to sell in connection with a mark. Now, patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value is not quite the American legal definition of obscenity. You're not seeing prurient interest in here, but it's pretty damn close. And the implication here is very clear. Despite what Mastercard says, they're not simply forbidding illegal content, they are forbidding illegal content or anything that they consider immoral and disgusting enough that it would harm their brand. And that's a completely different kettle of fish. And it is language like that which concerns me. And it's the entire reason that I am doing this update, which honestly I didn't want to do. You know, nobody really wants to talk about the legality of porn. All right? Nobody wants to be having this conversation. I definitely don't want to be having this conversation. You know, the re-release of Off is coming out pretty soon. I got my hands on it early. It's really good. You're going to love it. I've been trying to work on an article about the influence of that game and cryptic storytelling and why it works there but doesn't work when other people do it. And instead, I've been doing this. I've been doing this because it's important. It matters in the big picture. Because what we have here is the intersection of two problems that create a brutal chilling effect. First, we have a vague set of rules. And second, we have dire consequences for violating those rules. Because if these forms of payment pull their support for Steam, then Valve doesn't make any money off it. And that's obviously a massive deal. But the problem is they're going off of MasterCard's definition of what's considered offensive content. Well, what does MasterCard consider offensive content? Well, as is so often the case, they go with the most extreme examples. They go with non-consensual sexual acts. They go with sexual violence. But when you look at what's being removed, it doesn't include only that. It includes anything with sexual content, partially because Valve has to know that Mastercard has a history of going after people who provide this more vanilla sexual content, but also because that's just what happens when you get into a situation like this where the standards are so vague. No one really knows outside of Mastercard, and not even them specifically, what's going to draw their ire. And in a situation like this, a witch hunt becomes inevitable. When the circumstances are so dire, when failure to comply results in you losing your ability to conduct business for however long these people choose to maintain that ban, then you're going to not only eliminate the worst of the worst, you're going to ban borderline content, you're going to ban anything that can see the border, you're going to ban anything that you could imagine somebody complaining about. And that's how, for example, the game I've been talking about, Vile Exhumed, got caught up in this. I'm not a transgressive media kind of guy. I don't care for it. And in fact, I'm going to let you know a little secret here. Vile Exhumed, the game I've now sent you to twice, I don't like it. I think that the idea that this is supposed to be calling attention to some kind of real-world problem is a farce. It is a cover for a game that is fairly exploitative and leans very heavily on shock content for its horror. But the secret of it is, my opinion does not matter. No individual's opinion matters here. What matters is not subjective takes on a certain game's aesthetic or moral value. It is whether or not it violates the objective rules. And Vile Exhumed just doesn't. I played through a game multiple times that I don't like, just in order to see for myself that no, it doesn't violate the rules. It's not illegal, it's not pornographic, it's not harmful, it's not against the rules. But it has gotten swept up in this ban, it's gotten caught up in this witch hunt simply because it is shocking, it is transgressive, it is close enough to the line that it's not worth the risk of keeping it on the platform. And it's not going to stop here. We're actually damn lucky that video games have fallen way down the list on targets for moral panics, because all of you have seen what's going on in my home country right now with regards to our own moral crusaders. Books are getting banned left and right in increasingly aggressive and intrusive ways. It started off with just school libraries, now it's all public libraries, some of them are going after bookstores in these states. It's getting really aggressive, and on top of that, the categories of things they're banning are always growing. Remember that for many of the people pushing the book bans back home, any material that includes a transgender character is per se pornographic. Anything that includes art, any drawing that depicts nudity in any way is pornographic. It's resulted in patent absurdity like Shel Silverstein poetry collections and Calvin and Hobbes collections, for God's sakes, being banned in Tennessee for nudity. Because as amazing as this is to even think about, there have been cases where adult Americans with adult sensibilities have considered a line drawing of a child in a bathtub to be too shocking. What happens if and when these people do decide it's worth going after video games, going after comics, going after manga, going after any of the things you might like that they are currently ignoring? What happens when they go after them? I mean, this is a powerful tool. If just a random handful of Australian cranks have this much power, what could Moms for Liberty do? I don't consume transgressive media. I certainly don't cover it on this channel. But the fact is, the line for what is considered transgressive, for what is considered shocking, is always moving. And it's not always growing. Sometimes it's shrinking. What is considered acceptable in public society is dwindling. I was looking over a PEN America report about books that have been challenged and the reasons they were challenged, and some of the top reasons. I do not think of myself, in terms of the fiction I've done, I don't think of myself as a shocking writer or a transgressive writer. I think the things I do are, for the most part, pretty safe. Occasionally I push the boundaries, but it's really not my thing. I don't write transgressive fiction either. And yet, most of what I write could potentially be caught up in this. Of the 5 pretexts people have used most commonly to challenge novels, the last thing I wrote, Valravn, has 4 of them. This is not an edgy book. I am not an edgy guy. And yet, you have a gay character, you have some vaguely smutty jokes and some references to teenagers drinking beer and smoking pot, and that's it. That's enough to hang a challenge on. Video games have only survived this because the moral crusaders have been ignoring them for a while. Eventually, the attention will come back onto us, and you have to wonder, how far is this line going to get pushed? How many things are going to get pushed off of sites like Steam because some pressure group is able to exercise their power over them? I didn't want to get involved with this, but I kind of have to right now because this feels like the opening of a new frontier of attack on freedom of expression. And that matters. Even if right now it's only going after porn, even if it's only going after shock content, it is not going to stop there. It is going to move beyond, and eventually we're going to have to deal with it. The problem is, I have no idea how we're going to deal with it. Because we're talking about Mastercard, we're talking about Visa. If they're able to put this kind of pressure on a company as large as Valve, on a platform as large as Steam, then it's going to take a lot more than any one person or any group of people can do. And honestly, I just do not know how this story ends, but I have a feeling it's not going to end well. Yeah, I'm back to being a downer. That's just how it is.